What's up, YouTube? I have 12 companies here in front of me, and today I'm going to rank them from S to D tier in my opinions of them. I've built a multi six-figure net worth by investing in the stock market at the age of 25, and today I want to talk about these companies and where I think they sit. We've had a lot of moves these last couple of weeks and these last couple of months in the market, and I'm going to share today what I think of these companies and how they're going to perform towards the end of the year. This, of course, not financial advice, just what I think of these companies and where I think they're going to go. First one, and maybe a little controversial here, Micron. I'm going to rank this as B tier, and mainly because memory is so incredibly cyclical. Micron's been doing business for a while. If you guys study their business, you're going to know that they make a lot of money for a short period of time, and then they go into these hibernation eras where they're not making as much money as they were. And sure, yeah, AI is a little bit different. There's a lot of demand for Micron and chip manufacturers in general. They're sold out of their chips, and the stock kind of represents that. They've run more than 200% this year, probably even more. And I honestly think this company is phenomenal, but the market is way overshooting, I think, of what this company represents. And maybe 6 months from now, I'm going to look back and be like, oh my God, should have bought Micron at like $1,000 that's trading at today. But in my opinion, this company is very cyclical, and I like to invest in companies that have predictable business models. And Micron is a very cyclical company that only comes and goes every here and there. So in my opinion, B tier, I think they're great. They're traded at 9 forward PE. It just goes to show that they're making so much money and they have so much expected upside. But I think they trade at a lower PE ratio for a reason, because this market is very incredibly cyclical and the demand could dry up anytime. And we've actually been seeing Micron and some of these other companies trading down this last couple of days. I'm not saying this cycle is over. I just think that Micron is a little bit overbought on the technical levels. And I mean, you look at it, they're up like 200% in a year. So goes to B tier, in my opinion. Let's talk about Meta. So Zuck is back. We actually saw phenomenal news today. I'm going to rank Meta as A. I'm extremely bullish on this company. You guys know I hold a multi 5-figure position when it comes to a Leaps call that I have expiring in 2028. I'm not just saying this because I have money invested into them. I'm saying it because I think people are sleeping on this company. Traded under a 20 PE ratio this last couple of months. And today we saw great news talking about how Meta is going to be renting out and selling some of their compute capacity because they're one of the hyperscalers spending the most money on compute. And I really like Meta because Zuck is a little bit crazy. That's why the company's been selling off. They've had a ton of like failures in the past, like the metaverse. They spent like $80 billion trying to build that out. And people think that Zuck's going to go crazy again with CapEx. But for this reason, I think they're actually going to be making a ton of money, and people are just too scared to invest into Zuck's company. They're making like $26 billion a quarter in profit. The company's actually growing, even though they're spending like 160, $180 billion in CapEx this year, which is a ton. I understand it's a lot. They're kind of nuking their free cash flow, but the company's still growing revenues, which I think is phenomenal. It just goes to show that they have such a resilient business model, and I'll rank them as A. Let's talk about SoFi. This stock has been the stock of the moment. Anthony Noto is a phenomenal speaker. I watched that whole podcast that he did. I was still ranked as a C, though. I'm a fan of SoFi. I'm a fan of fintech. I'm a bigger fan of Robinhood, though, as a fintech play. But SoFi has a lot of room to grow, and I think they're going to be growing a lot these next couple of years. It's just not a bet that I'm willing to make because SoFi trades at a kind of an expensive premium right now. They've had a ton of different quarters that they beat, 9 of them to be exact. And I know the company has a lot of hype. It went from like $5 to $20 in a matter of like a couple of months last year, which is a crazy run. And I'm a fan of the company overall, but I just think at these valuations and at this time of the market where fintech's not necessarily getting all the love they deserve, Robinhood is a little bit of a different story. They're more of a crypto company, but SoFi, for example, is a phenomenal play. I think they're going to be a phenomenal company in the future, but right now, when we think about it, SoFi is kind of trading at a multiple that I don't know if they justify it. And I really respect the CEO going on the news or on that podcast and talking about the company. He really knows his stuff. Dude's sharp. He's buying multiple millions of dollars worth of SoFi. And this just goes to show the conviction he has. And that's really cool. But it's not necessarily for me. I'm more of a guy that invests into companies that I know are going to succeed in the future with a lot of certainty, like Meta, for example, like Microsoft. And we'll get into those in a second. But that's my opinion of SoFi. I just think they traded a high multiple. I do like the company, and I see a lot of success for them in the future. But these valuations are just not justifiable here, in my opinion. Nvidia, this one is everybody's favorite. And again, they're getting beaten up these last couple of weeks. Honestly, last couple of months, they had a gnarly double beat on their earnings a couple of months back, and the stock sold off, which is insane to me. Nvidia is an S tier company. I think their business is untouchable. They're making money over fists in this AI race. You guys know they design the GPUs that train all these models and they supply them to the hyperscalers like Meta, Amazon, Microsoft. They're spending hundreds of billions of dollars and will spend a lot of more money in the future. So they're the guys selling the picks on this gold race. You know, you guys have heard this saying before, but I think their business is phenomenal. Jensen Huang's a visionary guy. He's very smart. And I'm a big fan of NVIDIA. This is a generational wealth opportunity. And I think NVIDIA has been beaten up in this last couple of months unfairly. I think it's a phenomenal company that makes a ton of cash. And I'm a big fan. I don't necessarily have much NVIDIA in my public account that you guys follow, but I am a fan of the company and I remain bullish on them. Let's talk about Reddit. They trade at a somewhat of a high multiple, and I think it shows. They've had a gnarly move in the last couple of days. They're up like 33%, which is crazy. I'll rank Reddit as B. And that's mainly because they have a lot of data. And data is very valuable because Google, for example, can go and just buy Reddit. And now they have an infinite amount of data that they can supply answers to people. And like, yeah, it's people like me posting on Reddit. It's not necessarily trained professionals that are, you know, posting out there, but a lot of this data is very useful, and a lot of these subreddits have information going back like 10, 15 years. Reddit's been around for a while. So when it comes to that play, I think it's phenomenal. They do trade at somewhat of a high multiple, which is important to understand. You know, there's a lot of future growth, I think, with Reddit, but I'll rank them as B because I don't necessarily see how they're going to make a ton of cash in the future. They run at 90% margins, which is insane to think about, but it's just crazy to think how much more they can expand. Like, sure, they run ads on their platform, but like, how much more can they monetize on that data they have? I think they can. It's just a matter of like how and when that's going to happen. I like Reddit. I rank them as B, but it's not in the same caliber as like Meta and Nvidia, for example. Let's talk about Zeta Global. I'm actually very bullish on this company. I started buying into them a couple of weeks ago, and we had a couple phenomenal days here. I rank them as B mainly because they're not necessarily profitable, and there's a lot of insider selling off of this company. They have been a lot of their quarters, like 19 of them, if I'm not mistaken. They're growing revenues up to 50% every quarter. They're making a ton of cash. I just think it's a B tier as of yet because they haven't really proven themselves, and their market cap's still somewhat low, so they don't have that unit of economics that other companies like Meta, Nvidia, and Microsoft have, for example, in the software sector to compete with them. And only time will tell if Zeta stays in the market as a competitive player. They did just do a deal with Palantir for $100 million, which is really cool. And they're going to partner up on building AI, which is awesome. So I'm bullish on Zeta. I would just rank them as B, mainly because they haven't consolidated themselves yet in the market as a major player. But it's a bet I'm willing to take because this company, I think, has a lot of upside. And I have around like $1,500 to $2,000 invested into Zeta. Broadcom has been beaten up in these last couple of weeks, mainly because their CEO came out and gave guidance on their AI models and to their AI business in general. And he didn't really raise guidance for that business. And the stock sold off like 20% in a day, which is crazy. I still think they're an A company, mainly because they make so much money. They're such a consolidated company in the space. Like when you think about Broadcom, for example, the AI revenues up 143% to $10.8 billion in a quarter, which is crazy. They're making $10.8 billion from AI each quarter. They also have $73 billion worth of backlog. So business that these companies are going to pay them in the future. And it's already promised to them. So, I mean, this company is great. I think they've been sold off unfairly these last couple of months. I'm bullish on Broadcom. I already have so much exposure to AI and some other names that I prefer, like Meta, Microsoft, that we'll get into in a little bit, in ServiceNow. But I am a fan of Broadcom, and I think that this company will prevail in the next coming years. And I'll rank them as A because they're such a consolidated player in the space, and I'm a big fan of them. Let's talk about Microsoft, and I have two Microsoft names right here because I'm so incredibly bullish on this company. You guys know where it's going to go. I think Microsoft's an S-tier company. They've been around for so long. one of the best software players in the space. They are so sticky. Like when you think of Office 365, which is their enterprise product, they work with more than 85% of Fortune 500 companies. Product sells at like less than $20 a seat. Think about like Apple, Amazon, other companies that run Microsoft products. That's $20 times hundreds of thousands of employees they have. So this business is incredibly sticky. They also have Microsoft Copilot that is growing at an extremely fast pace. They have $625 billion worth of cloud backlogs, which is incredible. Azure is growing 40%, which is insane. Like when you think of a cloud business that is growing 40% and they make hundreds of billions of dollars every year, like it's just crazy to me. I think the stock has been beaten up so much these last couple of months, and we're seeing signs of a recovery now. And that's mainly because they're spending a lot of money on AI. And that's because they have hundreds of billions of dollars of cloud commits that they have coming up in the future. So they literally need the infrastructure. I think the stock has been slept on, and it's an S-tier generational wealth play, in my opinion. So let's talk about SpaceX, and maybe this one's a little controversial. I'm ranking SpaceX as D. Find me if you want in the comments, but this company IPO'd at like a $1.7 trillion market cap, and they make like $15 billion a year. Like this just doesn't make sense. They're actually kind of trading down these last couple of days, and they had a massive run up to like $200 if you guys have been following. And it's been such a big hype IPO, the largest IPO ever. I just think there's so much hype attributed to SpaceX. They traded like 130p multiple, which is just crazy to me. I'm a fan of Elon. I'm a fan of his companies, but I think the hype around the companies that he has is not necessarily extremely justified. Like, sure, Tesla has a lot going for them too with the robotics place. SpaceX the same way. They have all these data centers they want to put in space, rent out the infrastructure, and their path to making more money is there. I understand it, but the premium that they trade at today is just too much, in my opinion. I just think it's too much hype. And in a couple of months, like 6 to 12 months from IPO, insiders are going to start dumping. And that's most of the flow of the stock because they actually went public with only 5% of float, which is super unusual. And that's why the stock shot up so much. But that's what I got on SpaceX. Not necessarily the biggest fan of it. I love the business. I just don't like the stock. Let's talk about ServiceNow. This stock has been cut more than 50% from all-time highs. I'm going to rank ServiceNow as A, and that's mainly because the software sector has been beaten up so much in these last couple of months. They think that AI is just going to make ServiceNow and other software companies obsolete, which I think is bizarre. ServiceNow works with more than 90% of Fortune 500 companies, and now they're working on implementing AI workflows within those companies too. So ServiceNow is not going to go away with AI. They're just going to benefit from it. They're going to actually enable businesses to run AI and AI workflows. So if you're not familiar with ServiceNow, they're a platform that multiple companies employ to have different departments of the company talk to each other. So when you think of like ticket handling and like IT support, HR management, whatever it is, it all goes through ServiceNow, and it's a hub for multiple different departments to talk to each other. And now they got into this AI business where they're enabling workflows with more than 85% of Fortune 500 companies. So they have a lot of people that use ServiceNow. Of these customers that spend more than $1 million, they grew that segment of the business 130%, which is crazy. So they're upselling these guys like crazy. And ServiceNow, great company. I just think that software has been beaten up so much these last couple of months. And ServiceNow is going to be one of the better players in the future, mainly because their business is rock solid. They make billions of dollars of free cash flow every year. And I'm a big fan of this company. I'm long ServiceNow. I have like 85 shares. That represents around $8,000 to $9,000. Let's talk about Palantir. This one's a new one for me. I was not necessarily a Palantir hater, and I rank him as B, mainly because Palantir is just Palantir. You guys have heard of Palantir in the past. They had a massive run back in 2025. Alex Karp is always on the news talking about the newest thing they're doing. And if you're not betting on Palantir, you're betting against America and all this kind of stuff. And that dude's a little crazy. I do think Palantir on a stock level, like their valuations, they almost hit 52-week lows the other week, which is crazy to me. And I actually started buying into Palantir last week, and my position's up almost 20% already, mainly because they had a major rip today, accompanied by Zeta Global and ServiceNow. I'm just a big fan of the company, mainly because their valuation is so crunched right now. And sure, they still trade at like 100 or 90 P ratio, which is egregious work. But when it comes to valuations hitting 52-week lows in the software sector and Palantir being one of the biggest names in that space, I think it's a great buy. and I bought some of it. And it's not financial advice. This is what I think of these companies. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is my tier list right now and where these companies are going to grow and stay for the rest of the year. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Most of you guys watching this video is not subscribed, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you being here. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll talk to you guys soon.